Reputed to have been ripped from the chest of the greatest vampire to have ever existed, Janos Audron, the Heart of Darkness restores vampiric unlife. Life is precious, Janos discovered, as it was torn, throbbing and bleeding from his own body.
Like the Soul Reaver, the Heart of Darkness is a legendary artifact that has a long and terrible past. Due to time travel, it's an extremely ancient relic, as it has looped backwards and forwards through time, after having already existed for thousands of years. While it may not carry the same weight or significance to the series as the Soul Reaver, the Heart remains a crucial artifact and is the driving force behind several characters' actions. After emerging from his crypt, Kain talks about the Heart which once belonged to the great Janos Audron. It was during this time when he discovered the first of many strange objects which had been named after the original organ. Initially, the Heart featured in Blood Omen as a gameplay device. It appeared as a battle artifact and functioned as an extra life collectible. If Kain were to fall to an opponent, a Heart of Darkness card would activate, reviving the vampire so long as he had one available in his inventory. They could also be used to replenish his health, allowing Kain to add the blood of these hearts to his own blood vial. Throughout his journey, Kain stumbled upon numerous hearts, which is curious given that the later games established there was only ever one real heart to begin with. The retail version of Blood Omen omitted any explanation for the existence of these duplicate hearts scattered over Nosgoth. However, deleted audio offers some insight into what the developers had originally intended for these items. A cut description of the Heart of Darkness, extracted from the game data, states that these various hearts had belonged to Janos Audron's victims.
I knew of the legend of Janos Audron, a vampire who exists as but a whisper in shadow and night. The hearts of his victims lay scattered through the realm as a testimony to his hunger.
During development, this dialogue was altered to portray the heart as a singular object which could be reused. In the alpha version, Kain described it as having the power to be used over and over again, but came at the cost of depleting his magical energy. Further revisions to the script were made, and in the end, it was deliberately left vague as to what these so-called Heart of Darkness cards actually were. However, we would eventually get an answer from director Amy Hennig shortly following the release of Legacy of Kain Defiance. According to Hennig, the objects in Blood Omen are symbolic representations of the original relic, not the real thing. Hennig clarified Janos never had 99 hearts, and the collectibles Kain had acquired in his youth were merely duplicates. In later titles, the Heart of Darkness was given greater importance to the story. Upon arriving in the pre-Blood Omen era, Raziel found a stained glass mural in the Sarafan stronghold, demonizing Janos and depicting his execution at the hands of his murderers nearly 5 centuries ago. The Heart of Darkness was pictured being held aloft by a Sarafan warrior standing in triumph over Janos' bleeding body. Piecing together the story from the stunning imagery, Raziel recounted the tale of Janos' death.
His reign of terror ended when the Sarafan finally hunted him down and tore his throbbing heart from his still-living body. This relic came to be known as the Heart of Darkness, and was supposedly imbued with the power to restore vampiric unlife. The Sarafan therefore guarded it carefully, lest the heart fall into the hands of their enemies. But I wondered, could Janos Audron truly have been as monstrous as depicted here? Or was this merely artistic license by the Sarafan, who sought to lionize themselves by demonizing their darkest enemy?
In seeking the truths of his own destiny, Raziel travelled into Nosgoth's early history in order to meet the ancient vampire. He encountered Janos at his eyrie and to his horror watched the execution unfold. Raziel was shocked to see his younger Sarafan self being the one to commit the act. The Sarafan Raziel hacked open Janos' chest and ripped out his heart. Janos could do little to fight back, while incapacitated due to the debilitating effects of Mobius' staff. As Janos' retreat began to collapse, the Sarafan commanders withdrew, taking the Heart of Darkness with them, which continued to beat in the human Raziel's hand. Feeling personally responsible for the horrendous deed committed by his abominable former self, the Wraith Raziel vowed to reclaim the heart. He reasoned that if the heart indeed had the power to restore vampiric life, then perhaps there was a chance to return it to its rightful owner and revive Janos. Raziel pursued the Sarafan to their stronghold, but failed to find the heart before the Reaver turned on him at the end of Soul Reaver 2. For centuries the heart remained hidden, but would return as a quest item in the game's 5th entry, Defiance. Raziel sought Vorador and was surprised to learn the old vampire had kept the body of Janos within his estate. Even more surprising was the fact that the corpse remained free of decay 500 years after his murder. It turns out Janos' body would remain preserved so long as the heart was still beating. Over the years, Vorador had tried many times to reclaim the heart, but his human enemies had hidden it too well. Believing Raziel had a better chance of finding it, Vorador directed the Wraith to the heart's last known location, in the bowels of Avernus Cathedral. Within the Avernus catacombs, Raziel learned from the Death Guardian Mortanius that he had used the heart to turn Kain into a vampire. This moment recontextualizes one of Blood Omen's first cutscenes. It was said several times prior to this scene that the heart could restore vampiric unlife, and Mortanius proved that fact by using it to bring Kain back from the dead. Evidently, the heart had the power to create vampires from those who had died, and therefore it must have embodied the dark gift of vampirism. Kain was special as he was the first human to be resurrected as a vampire after his death. This discovery prompted Raziel to ask Mortanius where the heart currently is, which led to a shocking revelation.
Where is the Heart of Darkness now? Did you destroy it?
You still don't understand, do you? You cannot make use of it as long as Kain guards it with his life.
Kain has it. It is in Kain.
Yes, Janos' heart was inside Kain this whole time, ever since he first became a vampire. Mortanius had replaced Kain's heart with Janos' in an effort to create the sign of balance of ancient prophecy, who was destined to save Nosgoth. Kain was unaware that he possessed the heart, and despite initially using symbolic copies of the artifact to restore his health, he never searched for the original himself. On this point, I have a theory that Mortanius had a hand in creating and scattering these replica hearts across the land to aid the fledgling Kain in his quest. Mortanius was clearly familiar with the Heart of Darkness, and his position as Death Guardian likely granted him sorcery which allowed him to replicate the heart's power. I speculate that only Kain could have made use of these duplicates because the original organ had been hidden inside his chest. There's a good chance these copies were fueled by the power of the heart within Kain, allowing him to restore his health and bring him back from the brink of extinction when needed. In the era following Blood Omen, the heart remained inside Kain for over 1,000 years, through his rise to power, including the Battle of Meridian, the Hilden Lord's defeat, and long into the birth and fall of Kain's empire. We can roughly calculate how long the heart may have existed inside of Kain based on his age. Kain was around 30 years old during the events of the first game, when he acquired the heart. By the time of Blood Omen 2, 400 years had passed since Kain damned the pillars to collapse. It's estimated there's another 100 years between the ending of Blood Omen 2 and Raziel's resurrection. Raziel was then said to have served Kain for at least a millennium before being discarded into the abyss. Between his execution and return to the Sanctuary of the Clans, Raziel claimed that centuries had apparently passed. According to a Blood Omen 2 Q&A session with Crystal Dynamics, we can calculate this was approximately a further 500 years. This means Kain had retained possession of the heart for some 2,000 years, give or take depending on how often he used the chronoplast to time travel. It's difficult to know for certain how long Kain had the heart for, as time travel complicates matters, especially as it's implied he may have skipped the years between Raziel's execution and return. Needless to say, Kain clearly had the heart for a significant period of time, until his fatal confrontation with Raziel in the past. Now armed with the knowledge of where the heart had been hidden, Raziel confronted Kain and debated with him about raising Janos from the dead. Their squabble accumulated with them coming to blows, and ultimately ended with Raziel narrowly securing a victory over his former master.
No, Raziel. Victus. I didn't. to the conquered. I have found the heart of darkness, and you go to oblivion. Kain was gone. The madness of this place had somehow fueled my rage, and as it subsided, I felt no elation, no sense of victory. Only a calm certainty that we had once again walked blindly into our enemy's trap. I couldn't be sure whether Kain had truly intended to destroy me, and now it appeared I would never know.
With the heart safely in his possession, Raziel returned it to Janos' body, bringing the ancient vampire back to life. It's interesting to note that the heart was much older than the rest of the ancient's body. It had existed for eons before Janos finally got it back. Unfortunately, shortly after his resurrection, Janos was possessed by the Hilden Lord. On reflection, it's obvious the Hilden were aware of Mortanius' plans for the heart after having shared a body with the necromancer. The Hilden conceived their own scheme to counter the one Mortanius had devised. They needed a strong and durable vessel, and Raziel had unwittingly delivered to them the perfect body in the form of Janos Audron. For the next 4 centuries, the heart remained back in its original body, with the possessed Janos later being imprisoned to further the Hilden's agenda. Though not always directly observed, the heart has been present in all 5 main Legacy of Kain titles. In fact, 2 versions of it are present in Blood Omen 2 from different points in its time stream. This occurs whenever Kain is on screen together with Janos. Unlike the Soul Reaver, this meeting between the 2 identical hearts doesn't introduce any fatal paradoxes that derail history. However, I do find it amusing how these 2 characters share the same organ beating in their chests without either of them realizing it.
Strange how one's life casts a shadow far beyond one's own understanding. Here, in this alien vault, I discovered a being whose existence was entwined with mine far more than I could ever imagine.
Now that we know the truth concerning the heart, I guess Kain was right after all. Both his and Janos' fates were bound together in ways more labyrinthian than Kain could have suspected. At the climax of Blood Omen 2, the heart was dropped into the Hilden Gate along with its owner and sealed in the demon realm, and as far as we know, that's where it stayed. It's clear the Heart of Darkness meant a great deal to a number of characters. For Raziel, it was his one chance at redemption for the ugly crime committed by his human self. It was also his means for getting answers from one of the wisest beings to have existed in Nosgoth. For Vorador, the heart represented hope. It signified a way for him to bring back a father figure who could provide guidance to him during a time of great turmoil. The Hilden, on the other hand, viewed the heart as a convenient tool, something they needed in order to acquire a durable vessel capable of keeping them tethered to the material realm. Of course, the heart meant something entirely different for Kain. He understood the threat it posed after having lived through the events of Blood Omen 2 in the 4th timeline. Kain was aware of the Hilden's plans and using the artifact to raise Janos, and hoped to somehow prevent that history from occurring, perhaps by means of another Reaver convergence. Finally, for Mobius and the Elder God, the heart served as the instrument to bring Raziel and Kain into direct conflict, as it was a point of contention between the 2 protagonists. By tempting Raziel to rip the heart out of Kain's chest, Mobius and the Elder God were convinced that would be the end of the vampire. Kain, however, survived. No explanation was given in-game as to how this was possible, but some theorists have speculated that Mortanius may have been behind it. When first turning Kain into a vampire, Mortanius may have engineered events so that after an extraordinary length of time, Kain's life no longer depended on the heart. In any event, Kain returned against the expectations of his enemies. He confronted Mobius at the Vampire Citadel. It was shown on a previous occasion that Kain was susceptible to the power of the Time Streamer's staff, and he can be seen clutching at his chest in this earlier cutscene. As it turns out, the staff only affected the hearts of vampires. Now that Janos' heart was gone, Kain was no longer vulnerable to the Scepter's magic.
The Hilden are merely an inconvenient consequence. They will be dealt with in time. It is a small price to pay for Kain's death.
You're a bit premature.
Kain!
Is there a crack in your omniscience after all, Mobius? First, your omniscience, and now your powers. You're slipping badly.
This is not possible.
The part of me that staff affected is no longer in its place. But you already knew that, didn't you? I always was considered heartless. And now, Mobius, it is time.
To kill me? Again? Your only solution for every problem. Kill.
This is not a debate. You see, this time, you have nothing that I want.
Thanks for watching this deep dive into one of Legacy of Kain's most important artifacts. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you care to, and for more lore videos, do consider subscribing. Bye for now.